The Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return.
Dr. Libby Stuyt, thank you for being on our podcast once again and educating we ignorant people who keep trying to get marijuana legalized throughout the country. That's not me, but, there are those.
Thank you, Joni. I'm happy to be here. I agree
Awesome.
with
So,
you. We
in
don't
a
need this.
nutshell, I was going to say, in a nutshell, why should we not, legalize marijuana? Isn't it like really mild, like the marijuana of the 70s?
Not any longer. No. The marijuana of the 70s doesn't exist anymore. In fact, when I work with patients and I'm trying to encourage them to kind of go the harm reduction route where they're really addicted and they can't get off, I suggest they go to the dispensary and get something, less than 10% THC and see if they can start weaning down. And they come back and tell me they can't find it. It doesn't exist.
Oh, my goodness. So they should be able to get it at a pharmacy.
Well, I mean, right now, there are a few states where it is mandated that a pharmacist be involved with the dispensary, but that's very, very rare. I mean, like here in Colorado, dispensaries do not have, licensed medical people involved in the dispensaries. The people that are giving out information, they're called bud tenders, the people that work in the dispensaries. They're the ones that are telling people what they should use and how much they should use and how much it's worked for them. I mean, it's a lot based on anecdotal experience or their experience with it or their friends' experience with it. And they persistently advise people to take stuff that's really high in THC, especially for medical problems, which really bothers me. Because there really is no research at all supporting the high potency THC for any medical condition. I mean, all of the research that's been done has been on small doses, much less than 10% THC. And that's a real crime, I believe,
I think
because
you're right.
the industry has been allowed to advertise and heavily market these products as medicine. And, most states that have medical marijuana have multiple indications that it can be used for with no data supporting it at all, which is really, really sad. And in the fact that we actually do have prescription drugs available that are cannabis related. I mean, we have, pure THC in the form of Marinol or Dronabinol, and Nabilone is another drug. And then we have the CBD pharmaceutical drug in form of Epidiolex. So these are things that already doctors can prescribe.
And they have lower THC, is that correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, in terms of the dosing, I mean,
Right.
when you look at Dronabinol, it's pure THC, so it is a synthetic form of THC. So it's like 100% THC. But the recommendation is that you never take more than 1 to 2 grams or something a day,
Right.
20 milligrams a day, or
Okay.
that thereabouts. And, if you look at the products that we have available, like if people are going to dab, they usually dab something like shatter or wax. And these usually come in packages of a gram package. So that's like 1,000 milligrams. And they may be 70% THC. So that would mean there was 700 milligrams in that one package. And people can use multiple of those a day. And so if we're talking about 20 milligrams a day for Dronabinol, that's significantly higher dosing.
Yeah.
And in fact, most of the studies that were done to support cannabis for any medical condition have been done with a drug called Sativex. And we don't have that available in this country because it's never been FDA approved, but it's available pretty much everywhere else. And it is a balance. It's an oral mucosal spray that's a balance of THC and CBD, small doses. And if you look at the studies that were done that then were used to say, oh, yes, this can potentially help with nausea from chemotherapy or things like even chronic pain. Some of the studies looked at using that drug. The highest dose people usually got was 140 milligrams. So that
Wow.
is significantly different than 700 milligrams.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so that's what's
Wow.
so kind of crazy about it.
That's and here's the thing that I've heard, Dr. Stuyt, and this doesn't make sense based on what you're saying, and I do believe everything you're saying, that the reason for, yes, we need to legalize it medically is to, what's the word? To regulate it.
Yeah.
But how is that regulating it if they can't even get something with lower dosages of THC? I mean, I don't, that's like, wow.
Yeah, I don't think that people in the government have really thought this through, because if they want to reschedule marijuana to a Schedule 3, that would really put it in the class of, less addictive drugs. It's still considered addictive drugs, but they have very good medical use. Now, that usually goes through FDA approval, and then there is a determination of the amount you're supposed to take, the dose you're supposed to take, what exactly it is you're going to be taking. And right now, that is totally left up to the patient. I
Great.
don't know of any other drug that we have for any condition where you can say, oh yeah, this is my blood pressure med, and I just take it whenever I feel like it, and I take more if I think I need
And
it, and I
as
take
much
less.
as I want, I just kind of take it however, every label says take it the way your doctor told you to take it. Oh,
Yeah.
wow. That's like,
And
wow.
and we don't have, at least in Colorado, the doctors that are making the recommendations, the majority of them, in my experience, are not really educating the patient on what they should be taking. In fact, I have an email from a doctor where we were questioning what was the dose, what was the THC potency, what was the frequency, and the answer was up to the patient per constitution. So that is not like any other medication we have at all.
How is that like honest and ethical medicine? I don't
I,
quite get that.
I don't think it
I think you're
is.
questioning it too, but I'm questioning it.
Yes, I do not think it's ethical. And part of the problem is there was no organization put in charge of monitoring the physicians who are making recommendations. So when we try to complain about it, there's nobody to complain to. I mean, we have taken some of these to the State Board of Medical Examiners, and I don't think they do anything with it. And that to me is very sad. I think the
Yeah.
only way things are changing right now is through legal action. So people who have been harmed by the products are beginning to sue. And that's
Or
very
harmed by
sad.
someone on the product, right? Or harmed by someone who's
Right.
taking it. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because, one of the biggest concerns I have, and I work with organizations trying to educate the public, is the use of these products when the brain is still developing. And of course, your brain is still developing until mid 20s, even up to 30. But most of the research is showing that if you start using cannabis during adolescent years, that is putting you at really big risk for all kinds of things to happen negatively. And so I think we need a lot more education. And
You are listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information on the podcast or to reach out if you have a story you would like to share with us, go to our Facebook page by the same name, or you can email us at theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com or go to our website, theaddictionpodcast.com. And please remember to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a 5-star review. We appreciate you listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. We don't do this podcast because we are former addicts. We don't do this podcast because we have loved ones who have suffered from addiction. We do this podcast because we feel that addiction is one of the biggest problems facing the world today, and that no matter who you are, no matter your religion, no matter your income status, no matter your race, no matter anything about you, addiction affects you. Many listeners tell us they want to join the fight, but do not have the time or money to act, lobby, or just help. If that's you, go to www.patreon.com/theaddictionpodcast and see how you can help.
And so I'm working with this organization called One Chance to Grow Up, which is it's a Colorado-based organization where they started to this back when Colorado legalized recreational marijuana, recognizing that it was going to have a huge impact on kids. And so they've been trying to educate people about this. And so back in 21, we did get a law passed that put some controls on the concentrates, but not a lot. And one of the good things was we were allowed to make sure that there were warnings on the products for things that can happen to you. But I still don't think that has been enough. And so we're looking at trying to do more work in that regard. Because another place this is a real problem is with the hemp industry. And the Farm Bill, which now, it has been reversed in terms of trying to prohibit the intoxicating forms of hemp. But the industry is fighting that big time. And I think that, the government is listening more to the industry than to the people affected by it.
Gee, I wonder why they would do that, Dr. Stuyt. Couldn't have anything to do with money, right?
Absolutely. That's exactly what it has to do with. It's money. It's all about money. And,
Yep.
I have nothing against hemp. I think hemp is a really wonderful plant. I've had clothing made out of hemp. It's really wonderful. And I think that, you can eat hemp seeds for the nutritional benefit of them. But what has happened is because of the wording of the Farm Bill, it was all of the product had to be less than 0.3% THC by dry weight. And they've figured out how to get past that so that you can still have a significant amount of THC in the product. And then they've also figured out how you can take CBD, which, is a good product, but we don't have a lot of research on it yet, but I think it has potential for being helpful. But they would take the CBD, and that's mostly what most hemp growers are growing for. And then they would modify it using heat and acidification, which then would create these intoxicating hemp products, which are identified as Delta 8, Delta 10, THC acetate, the various isomers of the Delta 9 THC. And they all do the same thing. So they all affect the brain in the same way. And these are available nationwide legally in gas stations and convenience stores. And they're often sold as looking just like products that we normally would consume in the forms of candies. And there have been many children affected by this really negatively. And people don't realize that this is a problem.
Right. And you were talking about the adolescent brain and the effect of the new marijuana on the adolescent brain, but let's go back to the pregnant women who are doing it. And I shudder to think what it does to the fetus brain and infant brain.
Absolutely. And that is something that more and more people need to know about. Yasmin Hurd is a really phenomenal researcher who's been looking at this. She's in New York, and she has really been studying the intergenerational effects of THC on the developing brain, including from the father's use and the mother's use, which is very interesting. And
Hmm.
if you listen to her speak, what I heard her say that nobody really should be using cannabis unless they're 25 years of age or older, so their brain has really gotten to where it's fully developed, and they never plan to have children because it affects the
Never
gam.
plan to have children. Wow.
Yeah, well, you wait until after you've had them because it
Right.
affects the gametes. It affects the sperm. It affects the ovum, and that can then affect the developing brain of the offspring. And
Wow.
so it's a real negative thing on the brain. And so, when you're born with a certain number of neurons. And as you're going through childhood, these neurons dramatically increase with all these dendrites forming connections to all these nerves because a lot is happening. You're learning a lot, you're doing a lot, and all these things are happening. And then during puberty, so during adolescence, the brain is charged with deciding, well, what are we keeping and what are we getting rid of? Because we want to take the nerves that we're keeping and strengthen them by myelinating them so they're stronger. And then we want to take the nerves that are causing interference and pruning them. And, there's actually two receptors in the brain responsible for that. One is the cannabinoid 1 receptor. And we don't have that receptor because we're supposed to smoke cannabis. It's just that THC works on that receptor, and that's why it got called that. But we have our own natural system with that. And so the brain is charged with deciding that we're going to prune. And it's that receptor. And then the other one that's responsible for this is the nicotinic cholinergic receptor. And we have that receptor not because we're supposed to smoke tobacco, but it just nicotine works on that receptor. And so those are the two receptors responsible for the brain deciding what is being pruned during adolescence. And that to me means that the two drugs that adolescents absolutely should not be using are tobacco and cannabis. However, those are the two most likely to be used.
Yep. Yep.
And
Wow.
and so the more they know about this, and this is why there's a new kind of surge that I really support. That I think the campaign is called "Educate Before 8." And I think that we need to start educating people a whole lot sooner than they start using, because
I
kids
think
in
you're
grade
right.
school are using, and 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 so that's one of the things that this One Chance to Grow Up organization is doing. They're starting a campaign to educate parents and trusted adults who work with kids on all of this so that then they can also help educate the children. And and I think it's important. It's not scare tactics, it's just education. I mean, this is the reality of what's going to happen if you choose to follow
Right.
this path.
Right.
And
And
I
I
think that
believe,
more.
Dr. Stout, that if you take a young child, even one who's 8 or before then, and you educate them on why they shouldn't do something like marijuana, I think that a lot of them will go, "Okay, I won't do it. I shouldn't do it because here's
Yeah,
what I was taught."
you're absolutely right. I agree with that 100%. Part of the problem is a lot of the kids that are using because their parents use.
Mhm.
And so that's why I think it's really important that the parents get this information because
Yep.
they, they may not have started until late in their career, which would be fine. But they need to be helping their kids understand that this is not the way they want to go.
Yep. I think you're right. I think you're right. So, Dr. Stuyt, do you specifically what is your practice? What do you deal with usually? What types of
Well,
patients?
right now I am retired from clinical practice. I
Okay.
did that for 30 something years, and
Okay.
I mostly ran treatment programs. So I mostly was the medical director, psychiatrist for long-term treatment programs, and so I have an incredible amount of experience working with people, especially using cannabis, and me recognizing this has been a problem in the last 10 years. Basically is when we started seeing more of the problems, because Colorado was the first state to legalize recreational back in 2012, and we opened the doors in 2014, and then we started seeing more and more problems, and that's when I had to start getting educated about it, because in the olden days, we weren't very concerned about marijuana. I mean, we didn't really think it was
Right.
a problem. And I think if we still had the old time marijuana, we still wouldn't think it was that much of a problem. But it's with these
Exactly.
high THC products that we're seeing the problems. And so in my experience, a lot of the people I worked with were having significant cognitive problems. I would do a MOCA, which is the Montreal Cognitive Screening Test, on everybody who came into the program. And even though these are bright people, young people, amazingly had poor scores on that. And it was
Yep.
really totally related to the fact that they were using high potency THC right up to admission. And,
Yep.
this is a very intense cognitive behavioral program, and they were having significant difficulty functioning in that regard. And so that was one of my concerns. Then the other biggest concerns were I started seeing the worst psychosis I had ever seen. I mean, it was
That's
worse
what Dr.
than
Finn was talking about.
methamphetamine. Yeah, it was worse than methamphetamine, worse than alcohol, and really significant delusions. And when people get a delusion, at least the ones I've worked with, it is really hard to change that. I mean, medication doesn't touch a delusion. And you have to really work with somebody to try and help them get past that, because they truly believe this. I mean, I would have a lot of young men who truly believed that the CIA or the FBI had implanted electrodes in their brain and were now monitoring them. And they truly believed that.
Yep.
And it was related directly to using high potency THC. And then the other
I
thing I
and
was seeing
yeah.
was, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and I hope people are listening. I hope they're listening to this. When we talked to Dr. Finn, he said a lot of psychiatrists in Europe, they know that marijuana causes psychosis, you know, and it's just so
Mhm.
why do it, you know? And you just
Yes.
likened it to
Yeah.
methamphetamine.
Yep. Well, and I actually, in my experience, I've treated a lot of people with methamphetamine problems, and they were much easier to work with than the people with THC induced psychosis. So, cannabis induced
Wow.
psychosis is really difficult to change. And I have the
Wow.
experience of patients requiring up to 3 antipsychotics to stabilize them. And
Wow.
that's awful, because those are really
Yeah.
potent drugs that have a lot of side effects. But when that was the other thing that I was seeing that Ken speaks to, and Ken and I are now working on a paper we're hoping to publish about this, is the increase in violence associated with cannabis. And I was seeing that in my program. And that it's just hard to reconcile. because people say, oh, that can't possibly be, these are, it's supposed to make you happy and give you munchies and it just makes you sleepy. That may be the old time marijuana, but this new stuff is totally different. And I had a
Yep.
young person who was dabbing 30 times a day. And people don't dab that often just to get high. A lot of it is they're in withdrawal all the time, and so they have to keep using in order to not feel horrible, because the withdrawal is really dramatic. Withdrawal from, for any addictive substance is usually the exact opposite of what the drug does for you. And
Right.
most people that are tobacco users recognize that. And initially they don't. They think it's helping them. It helps calm them down. But what it's really doing is it's fighting the withdrawal, which is causing a lot of anxiety. And the same thing is happening with the high THC. So withdrawal from high THC is, the main symptoms are irritability, anger, anxiety, can't eat, can't sleep, and massive cravings for marijuana. And many people that are using it do not believe they're addicted to it. They just believe,
I'm sure.
it wore off. They think, oh, I was using it for this and now it's worn off, so I have to use it again. And they do not recognize that this is withdrawal. And so I usually challenge people who tell me they're not addicted. And I said, okay, that's great.
Stop.
Why don't you go ahead and stop and don't
Yep.
use for a month and see what happens? And when people take me up on that, if they do actually do it, they feel better. So at the end of a month, when it's had a chance to totally ooze out of all their fat, they feel better. And
Yep.
their sleep is
Yep.
better, their anxiety is better. So all the things they were using it for actually get better. But
Wow.
most people I've worked with are not able to quit on their own. And
Right.
that's why I really advocate for more treatment. We need more inpatient residential programs, and we need at least some. We don't even have any for young people, for adolescents that are long-term inpatient. It's just,
Wow.
it's, you have to have a lot of money to get
Yep.
into a long-term or residential program. And
Understood.
it's
So,
just,
Dr.
I
Stout,
think
if
that's
someone
why
is
people,
listening, sorry, I cut you off, but
yeah.
if someone is listening, and I believe everything you said because I know it's true, and I've talked to enough people to know that it's true. If someone listening wants to know where they can find out factual information on marijuana, where should they go?
Okay, well, there's many places. The organization I'm on the board with is called ISAC, which is the International Academy on the Science and Impacts of Cannabis, and we have a website which is, you know,
IASIC
ISAIC number one
.org or
.org.
.com? .org.
No,
Okay.
it's .org. It's a
Okay.
nonprofit organization, and there's tons of research available on that website. We're
Okay.
also, Isaac is a part of Drug Free America Foundation. And so they have a website. You can look on that website for Drug Free America Foundation. And then there's also lots of organizations working with kids. And so, like, this One Chance to Grow Up is an
Right.
option. Um, Johnny's Ambassadors is another really helpful
Yep.
one.
We had
Every
Laura
Brain
Stack on
Matters.
recently. Yeah. Oh, Every
Yeah.
Brain Matters. I
So
like that one.
Every Brain Matters, that's run by Aubrey Adams. She is a wealth of information. Um, and all these people that are, talking about their kids that have had problems and sharing that with other
Yep.
people are really helpful. I mean,
Yep.
it's just, and
Yep.
sadly, most of the bad things are psychosis, so people are becoming
Hmm.
psychotic from using the drugs. And then also suicide is another really highly correlated problem with the use of cannabis or marijuana. And
Yep.
that is just really devastating, I think.
Yep. I agree with you. Dr. Stuyt, if you had just one more word, one final word of warning to anybody listening who thinks that they know best about marijuana and long-term usage, what would you say? Besides stop.
Yeah. Well, my biggest recommendation is to, if you're really insistent on using this, wait until your mid-20s. So wait until you're 25 before you actually start trying it. And then if you're going to
And you've
try
had
it,
kids
try
already.
some. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
And start really low. And the industry does this. They say start low, go slow, which is absolutely true. And because, there's really big danger with the things like the edibles because it takes a long time for those to actually get absorbed and into your brain. And so you have to listen to the recommendation. And that's been part of the problem with people who have died. They didn't listen to the
Mm.
recommendation, but the recommendations are kind of crazy. Like one case, the person was told you're only supposed to eat a sixth of the cookie. Who eats
Oh,
a sixth of a cookie? I mean,
that's not even a cookie.
but that's really important. But that's really
Yeah. Yep.
important.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then if you have any symptoms that are, you know, mental health symptoms wise, it's really recommended you stay away from it. I mean, if you have a problem
Yep.
already with depression, anxiety, suicide, this is not going to help you. It's only going to make it worse. And so
Right.
people, young people, pregnant women, people with mental health issues, it's really recommended to not use at all. And then if you're outside that group, then start low, go slow, and be
Yep.
very careful about frequency because most of the problems happen when people are using regularly. If somebody's
Yep.
just using occasionally, once a month, that's not going to be a big deal. And maybe even once a week, depending if you're just using a little bit. But if you're using regularly,
Right.
that's when the problems really arise.
Understood. Dr. Stuyt, thank you for talking to us today. And thank you for continuing to fight this good fight and try and shed light and educate people on this drug that so many think is just the mild marijuana of the 70s. I appreciate you. I appreciate Dr. Finn. I just appreciate you guys getting out there and just telling it like it is.
Okay, well, thank you. And thank you for getting it out there.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
My name is Amy Newman with Newman Intervention and Recovery Solutions. Bobby and I have spent years helping people with getting sober and staying sober. And we know one of the hardest parts about it can be after treatment. That's when real life hits and support can feel very far away. So we created the Sober Support app. It gives you daily check-ins, encouragements, and a structure to help you stay on track. It's simple, private, and designed to keep you connected to recovery every single day. To find the app, go to studio.com and type in Sober Support.
You have been listening to the Addiction Podcast, Point of No Return. For more information, reach out to us on Facebook or go to www.theaddictionpodcast.com. Our email is theaddictionpodcast@yahoo.com.